All right, I think we're going to get started. It's my pleasure to introduce you all to Liz. She's the UX principal at Home Depot, and she's going to be spending some time today talk to us about how do we kind of present research findings. And this is very relevant to you all as you're thinking about presenting your survey findings and also thinking about the next step. How do you kind of synthesize both the qualitative and the quantitative data that you have across your various studies in your final presentation. And on that note, I'll let Liz take over.
All right, thanks, Gary. Thanks for the nice introduction. It's a pleasure to be here, be back at my alma mater. And so yeah, let's jump in. Okay, so when you guys go get jobs out in the real world, this is what I'm paying you to do. So I hope you know, Gary's already taught you about like actually conducting your research. I'm just going to go through it a tiny bit just to kind of holistically show you what a research report looks like that I'm expecting to see. But these are your high level tasks for your whole discovery phase, right? These should not be new to you. So of course, you're going to talk with your product manager to start, understand the context and scope of your research, and you are facilitating this discussion with the product team. So you want the decision makers there, and I really want you to be leading this because you need to know what you need to go learn for them. Then of course you're going to do the research, do the work, then synthesize. Should be collaborative, but you also need to take time to really understand what you are seeing by yourself. How does this impact the business, and what kind of story do you want to tell? Finally, the main bulk of what we're going over today is your actual findings. I typically add this to the end of the scoping document that I'll show you in a minute, since I like keeping kind of all of it together, keeping track of all the decisions that have been made over time. And your audience is going to be the product manager and decision makers, right? So this is your time to educate them, share the unbiased data, and we're here to help them make decisions. So this is never an opportunity to provide your opinion unless very explicitly asked. That's not what user research is, right? So our goals for today in terms of what is an effective report. Today we're going to put on our PM hats. So as a PM, I need to make decisions to move this project along quickly. And we can also put on our tech company hiring manager hats, because you should also get some great tips for crafting your case studies for your portfolio today. So I'm expecting from a great report, you're going to provide me good data and the risk level of what we're going after. You are the data artiste. You are here to help product make decisions. And again, no opinions. I want you to make it meaningful. I should not be seeing lots of raw data. I want to see it transformed into information and knowledge. And I really want to learn something. You need to be credible, of course. Your methods need to demonstrate how you acquired the data in an unbiased way. I want to see sources. I want to see calculations annotated. Otherwise, you could have just grabbed, 44% out of anywhere, right? I want to see anomalies specifically called out. Like if the users were not screened properly, that's going to mess with the findings. Like this all speaks to your credibility. So I need to see those pointed out. And then finally, you want to be concise, get in, drop those truth bombs, get out. We want to see strongly validated insights very, very easily. And I believe it was, I think Steve Krug, you guys can correct me. Was he the one that said, don't make me think? So I don't want to have to think about what I'm reading. All right. So I'm going to go through this first piece of the report fairly quickly because, again, I believe Gary has already covered it with you. I just want to show you holistically what I'm expecting to see in a research report, because I'm expecting a research report to be a standalone type of deliverable. When you are done with research and you walk away from it or you leave the company, this is what kind of stands by itself. to help any other designers that come along after you to understand like what happened. So here's what I put in my research report. Number one, who is on the team? This is just, put their names in here, who worked on it. That way, again, if you leave the company, I can see, oh, I should go talk to this other person to get more information or get more specific documents. I always share the user-centered design methodology with my team. Make sure they're on the same page. Make sure they all understand what UCD is. This is just, having your own, your fresh graphic in there. And then as you can see here, I like noting where we are in the methodology. So per research report, I have just conducted my user research. So we are in the share out phase, the planning to really determine what are we going to go design. Here's just one additional graphic if you like this one better, more linear, more simple layout for you. And then again, you have covered scope goals and how to set up your research earlier, but again, for historical purposes, it's good to kind of have this. So we're going to talk about who are the users. A few examples here. I always like leading with who are the people we are trying to serve. Then number two, always, what are our users trying to do? What's that proto journey map if you have it written out ahead of time? I love having at least something to go off of so I know what I should be observing. It's also more efficient to go in with some idea of what you're looking for. And this is my very, very specific journey map template. Really important to ground your product development and what the end user is trying to do. So first piece is, how did the user get here? What was going on right before they were about to jump into some sort of work or task? The sticky notes are the actual task that I'm expecting to be observing. And then the third piece is, what was that desired outcome? What was that Zen state? The user is happy, the user is satisfied. What does that literally look like? So those are the three pieces I need to get started on research. If we have any more notes we want to talk about the desired outcome for our end user, I have a space to discuss with my team. Again, all before research, what are our project goals and success metrics? I love laying out what the goals are and the success measured and the data points I should be capturing right underneath it. All pre-research. What do we want to learn? Again, another collaborative piece with your team that they should be popcorning learning goals to you. Anything we already know about the problem, anything we already know about anything else. And that gives me enough information to get started on my research. So now I'm going to be thinking a little bit about what methods I want to use. At this point, the research report is about a third of the way done. You haven't done any work yet. So like I said, reflect by yourself for a little bit. What's the best approach to obtain those answers you're looking for? You're going to be digging into your HCDE toolkit to come up with that approach. This piece shouldn't typically be too heavily influenced by product and dev. I see junior designers a lot worried, or they feel bullied by product when they're telling them how to do something. But this is a chance for you to really get coaching from your UX mentors and peer reviews before fully digging in. Oh, this is also a piece of your research report that you can skip sometimes. Sometimes it's nice to just have maybe in the appendix. Definitely, if you're short on time on creating a research report, you can probably skip this whole thing. But this is all an example. And by the way, everything in this report is an example. None of it is real data. So this is an example of some of my intro to like the methods I chose and like why I chose them and the anomalies I was kind of mentioning. So like prerequisites, we were looking for users who had never used the system. Unfortunately, not all of them understood all the tasks. That was important to mention when we're sharing like system usability scale reports when it was low, right? This like, was it because of the software interaction or is it because they just didn't literally understand the process? So yeah, some notes on how we gathered the data. Some examples like, here are all the questions we asked in this research study. If it's a usability test, it might be more, what tasks did we assess? Anything of note in your participant, how you screened the participants. So here we talk about what experience level they had. Again, is that speaking to the satisfaction or the ease of use ratings? Okay, starting to jump more into sharing data out with your product managers. Please don't share your whole board. Please don't share raw data. This is overwhelming. I know that some junior designers try to demonstrate, like, look at all this work I did. That's not the point of the report. The point is really share those very clear nuggets. Similarly, when we're talking about insights, of a clear definition of what a strongly validated insight is. I want to see insights. I don't want to hear about the loud end users. So when you're taking notes in your research, one of the methods we use is kind of one nugget per sticky. And then we move all the stickies around, right, to affinity map. So a strongly validated insight looks like this. 4 out of 5 different colors, different users said a similar thing. This number is very arbitrary, but it's like around 50% of your user population said a thing. That's probably a good indicator. It's a strongly validated insight. If you have lots and lots of stickies, but they're the same color, that means the same user was just talking about it for a really long time. So that's not a strongly validated insight, because it's just one really loud user, right? So here on the left, I do want to point out again, the themes in your synthesis I'm actually looking for, and I do joke with Gary and others that synthesis is one of the hardest things for students to do really well. So a good insight or a good theme is something like, the parents won't let them go to therapy because they're using the same medical insurance. There's a stigma in the family around mental health and therapy. That's a really strongly validated insight. That's very clear. It's a very clear problem, right? Whereas over here, the themes that are not actionable are things like the user wants the solution really quick, like they need it now, or like COVID, or like these are training needs bucket. These are not actionable to me or product manager. So that's kind of hopefully the difference. Any questions on insights? Gary, hopefully you can help monitor the room.
Yeah, there are no hands up at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now I'm going to slow down a little bit. So now we're getting into the actual findings presentation. Findings presentation piece of the report. So, okay, you did all your research, and hopefully what I've just demonstrated is you always, no matter any meeting, any report, you always need to set context with your audience. So that's what I just kind of demonstrated to you in the template that you have access to after this. You need to start with some sort of contextual information for your audience. So now the exciting part of the research report is how you're sharing what you just found. So one option for how I like sharing findings is if we have formally documented what our assumptions are at the beginning of the research. It's kind of fun to show what we thought would happen versus what actually happened, and how right we were and how wrong we were. So for example, the users know which codes to use and when. That's what we thought going in, but when we observed all the users, they all had to look up all the codes, and they're using our search functionality, and oh my gosh, also it's broken. So that was that's a big problem. That's something we want to elevate very clearly. This is very concise and small and manageable to consume. Similarly over here, where we write, the users can figure out how to plug in the speaker. We think they know what an electrical outlet looks like. We observed 5 users. All of them did not need any instructions on setup until they got farther down the process. So validated that we were right. Okay, talk to me about somebody. Are we oversharing user feedback here?
think.
Is this raw data?
There's a yes over here.
Okay, we heard one yes. Yes is the correct answer. So populating a deck with all of your favorite user quotes is ineffective and doesn't make any kind of point or help me understand any kind of action we need to take. I spoke with a mentee a few weeks ago. He had a lot of this in his portfolio case study again to kind of demonstrate, look, I'm doing research, but I asked him why he was showing all of this. He said it thought it'd be a good example of the type of information he was gathering and looking at. And I told him, as a hiring manager or as a product manager, I'm paying you to read all these for me and give me the best highlights. So these are not insights, this is raw data. And he also assured me he was going to redo his case study. Okay, this is not an example of slide design. Please do not judge me for slide design. And apologies for the Amazon 1998 throwback. I wanted this specific design pattern. I couldn't really find it anywhere on the Google. But so we're getting a little bit better toward user feedback. I just wanted to point out the data elements I want to include here. So at the very top, I have my very clear research question. Right below, I have the very, very clear answer. And my research question probably isn't even what's the score. It's probably like, how easy was something to use, right? And it was about 4 out of 5 stars of ease of use. So that's the very clear answer. I want to see a little bit of context. So if this is literally like a book review, are you going to trust a 4 out of 5 stars with 44 reviews? Are you going to trust a 4 out of 5 stars with 4,400 reviews, right? Like the context really matters here. And then down here, we have the additional proof or additional color or interesting piece of your findings. And we'll go a little bit farther. It'll be like, a picture or a graph or, like one user quote. Here I have 2 quotes. They're both still pretty big. So we're kind of getting toward, I'm showing you how we're getting towards better and ideal. But what's interesting about this is they're 2 kind of opposing viewpoints that speak to the same exact thing. So I thought that was kind of interesting to show that. I might choose maybe just maybe one sentence on each side instead of like the whole thing. Okay, so even better is when you show the very clear insight and just like one quote and as well as context. So here, our assumption was that users do not see the notifications telling them about critical drawing updates. And this user has confirmed my assumption because it appears he's using the drawing off a piece of paper, not the app at all. But is one user quote enough to make my quote? Is one quote enough to make this a strongly validated insight? I hope some people are saying no to themselves. So I also like to see something like 5 users shared this sentiment. We still want, if it's a quote, like you see, I have quotes on here. So this needs to be a legit, real quote. If it was more of a theme, an insight, then we just kill the quotes. But I want you to talk about how this is like a main finding in your research. This insight by itself doesn't seem to be very alarming, but when I'm presenting it to a subject matter expert who knows the company policies really well, and the procedures state that the mechanics are supposed to throw paper drawings away at the end of every day, this could be a huge compliance and safety nightmare. So it's a very large safety finding, that we're uncovering here. So this is one of my favorite ways to share strongly validated insights with my product team. And on the right, you can have, you can show like a picture, you're taking pictures during your user research of the environment, just something really fascinating. One time I was in the electrical bay in an airplane, and the tube ducting was too close to the electrical wiring, and the user had to like put something, they were supposed to install something between the tube and the wiring, and they could barely fit their hand in there. So those kinds of photos are really helpful to show product, like, you know, we're telling them, but showing them is so much more effective, right? Okay, so what did you observe that was the huge problem? And again, this is from your synthesis. So after you're synthing the big, you got your big insights. Now you're talking about how many people said the thing. So which one's like the strongest, and what's the severity? So those are two big things I'm communicating. And that's, again, kind of speaking to the risk of the findings, the risk of your software that you're working on. So let's see what we got here. The users expressed deep, uncomfortable feelings around upselling products to customers when they were clearly unrelated to their shopping goals. Many of them shared they don't upsell at all when they're saying they do. This finding is very damning to a call center KPI when the KPI is stating that everyone is upselling particular products, but actually aren't. So your return on investment of customers actually buying the upsell products is really, really not in alignment anymore. So this would have shock value to your stakeholders. This has impacting user adoption, which is the highest risk item I present to my product team. It's the most threatening to your software success, right? Our job is to reduce the risk of the software failure by uncovering these big red flags that would happen after we released our software. And then if we're finding this kind of things out, it would be very, very detrimental to our software if that was like a main feature we were trying to push. And as you can see here, 5 out of 5 users said this. This means it's very strong. Insight has 100% of users. And again, that's the highest severity. The next severity down that I present is a usability issue, right? Usability issue means they literally cannot use something in our software. And that is an absolute need to be fixed, right? So most users got stuck on the payment screen. Some were unable to type in their address the way it was served on their keyboard. That means they literally cannot continue. They are blocked. This also, we call this pass rate failure, right? So very critical. Somehow one person maybe had a short address and one person was able to do it, but got to fix that keyboard, right? The next severity down is a procedural inconsistency. This type of finding is more for product management to make a decision about how the software is serving interactions. So according to the design pattern, the interaction is basically working correctly, but it might not be working according to the business rules that we want. So here, the user did not technically misunderstand the UI. They just had wildly unique interpretations of the requirements. And again, these are the things I'm pushing. I'm sending the product to make a decision one way or the other, because we can make the UI, we can change the UI easily, essentially, for things like this. These are also the funny ones where we're like, how the heck did the user break this? So it seems clear from the screenshot that the user should type in their name and then their email address, right? But, and again, this is all I've made all this data. What we see here is the user in the preferred contact field just typed in email. And we were like, what? How did they do that? We thought, so maybe like, I was Googling this screenshot earlier. A lot of it had name and then type your email here. So we just did that little UI change. I think, the procedure would be more consistent. We would get the desired effect easier. Okay, and then my fourth and lowest level of severity that I'm presenting for product is a user interface issue. These are the lowest priority type of issue. These are typically things that are more bothersome or annoying to me, like things I notice, but there's a clear workaround. The user can complete their task just fine. This is things like a picture out of alignment, a grammatical error, a notification, maybe not firing properly, but of course that you'll need to figure out the severity on even something like that. But so here, you're just trying to take a picture of the sunset. The picture is showing up too dark on the screen. But he can still take the picture. The picture may turn out fine in his gallery, but maybe just like the screen is too dark. So maybe he like couldn't find the brightness value slider immediately, but after a few uses, like he did find it. So it's bothersome, but not like a critical issue to your app. I'm going to pause there for any questions on qualitative findings presentation.
Any questions on reporting qualitative data? Good opportunity to get a different perspective.
Okay, so let's talk about quantitative findings. How do you share your quantitative findings? Okay, talk to me about, is this pretty?
What do y'all think? I see a bunch of them shaking their heads, but does anyone want to talk through what you're seeing? Go ahead.
It's pretty cluttered, but you can't just look at it and immediately generate kind of the key insights. You really have to like hunt through it to kind of know that.
Said it's pretty cluttered. You can't really see through the insights. Is that it?
Yeah, you just have to, you're doing a lot of work to find what you're looking for.
And you have to do a lot of work to find what you're looking for. Go ahead.
Yes, I love that.
There's one more.
You're having oh, one more, yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, each one is kind of pretty, but when they're all together.
The comment was that each one is kind of pretty, but when they're all together, it's a bit too much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, everybody. So what's nice about my job, working at a big enterprise company, I have a higher chance of having access to really big data. The last survey I've been working on so far has 194,000 responses. So that lends itself to really fun visualizations. But is this useful to you as a product manager? I heard some of you guys say no, it is just too much. We want our product managers to take away very clear answers from this. And this is making us think too hard. There are too many answers packed onto here, and I've already forgotten what my research goals were. So how we're gonna morph this is we're gonna focus on the team's absolute top questions. The kind of same formula. What are our absolute top questions? What are the very clear answers? And what are those qualifiers or proof that we found in the research? This kind of stuff is great source of data to supplement your research, but I don't want to see any really full screenshots in your report. Similarly, for production monitoring, kind of, again, I'm coming from a manufacturing background, something that's, I'm talking to users about how it's going on the shop floor, but then I'm seeing what's literally going on. This is always more reliable than what a user tells me and recalls from memory, right? So again, we're not trying to show all this all at once. We're gonna look for creative ways to use this to supplement your research. And it's really exciting at a big enterprise company when I uncover a piece of software that has more data than I thought I had access to. So yeah, again, we're gonna try to pick one or two of these items and really elevate that. So I wanna just share some tasteful presentation options I found on the Google. Does anyone wanna share why I like these? Sorry, they're so tiny.
Oh, here's one.
If there's numbers, the numbers are like big, clear, it's obvious.
Mhm.
Like You just look at it and see the numbers. You don't really need to read the descriptions if you don't want to or don't need to. And they kind of what it looks like only have like one or two key findings, not like everything in one, or if they have multiple, like the summaries or like one sentence. So it's not too cluttered either.
Yes, very good. Anyone else?
Yeah, I feel like there is a very strong like type hierarchy that you can like see the important materials immediately, and then you can dig deeper if you just have to.
Yeah, I like that information hierarchy. Love that. Also, good use of white space here. These slides are breathable. No one packed a whole table into the whole stretch of the slide. There aren't any terribly huge paragraphs. The ones I see on here, I probably wouldn't have if I grabbed it off of an example. I wouldn't make them that big. And then besides all the great comments from the class, it's clear that one main question is being answered here. Also, these feel somewhat soothing to me, so aim for that emotion. Okay, system usability scale. This is a language nobody knows at our companies. Nobody understands. If you just say, I got an SUS of 80, like they literally have no idea what that means. So we need to give them some English qualifiers for context. I love this screenshot from, I think, Adobe. So we're going to show exactly where ours showed up. It's in an acceptable range. Mine are more sometimes down there in the past. So this is great to show them like, oh, this is really good. We got a good score. Yay us. Yeah. Similarly with your pass rates, if you've done a usability test, I like showing for each user, did they pass or fail? And again, kind of going back to our tasteful modern presentation slides, you can probably just even have the high level numbers and the tasks. You probably don't need all of this even now that I'm even thinking about it. But what's interesting is what I was trying to highlight in a past research study was, you know, who specifically was failing? Like, was it for a specific fleet? Was it a type of experience? So I was trying to do a little bit more analysis than just task free was the worst, but you should be able to see that very clearly, which one didn't do well. It's obviously task free. And then friendly reminder not to use red, green colors by themselves. You'll see I have color meaning on top of the color to supplement what that color means. So 66.7 is obviously the lowest number, made that red. Yeah, so watch out for red, green. All right, we're kind of winding down our research report. Anyone have any questions on quantitative findings presentation?
I have a question. Some of the students were asking about this too. Do you have any recommendations on how to kind of provide visualizations for rank data, or how do you treat sort of rankings?
Rankings?
Yeah.
Like 1, 2, 3. Like here's the top one. Here's the second one. Some sort of line. I kind of like a few of these. The 1, 2, 3, 4, it's very clear and obvious. I'm less of a visual designer and more of an obvious, like, put it out plainly. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, very clear. I like this stack, like 31 is on top. So that's kind of pretty. And I also like this all on the same line, like in our Western culture, we read left to right. So the left one would be the first thing you see. So maybe some sort of combination of all that.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'm kind of, was there another question or?
No.
Okay, just some feedback. So the kind of final section is reframing and summarizing. So these are not in any particular order. Like this is kind of some of the summary slides. So maybe you're putting this in the beginning. But I did want to start off with one little note that these are not to be 60-page white papers. They can maybe be 60 slides if they're like very small amount of things on the slide and you're kind of chunking through them easily, but not like 60 slides with full text. That's what we're trying to avoid, because it not only takes your time, but not a lot of people are reading it. I learned that the hard way. My first ever usability test at Boeing, I wrote a 60-page summary of my usability test with all the different engineers, and I spent weeks and weeks on it, and I don't think anyone read it. So learn from me. I want snappy and precise insights. The presentation is to add color and to have a great discussion with product, but the bulk of your synthesis work should be figuring out how to make it into the absolute smallest story possible. So we already talked about, I don't want to see full synth boards. I don't want to see full storyboards. I want to see 10 user quotes. I want to see full affinity diagrams. Just give me the absolute best highlights. And then, stretch goal, if you can stick it in a Slack message like this, that is awesome. And then, you link your deck. Hey, you want to see, right? Oh, I haven't have it. You can read the full report here. Like that is fabulous. That is job well done from me. And yeah, this can take weeks and weeks to come up with as well, but you're doing the good work. So some summary items coming out of your research could be, and if this is new info. If you have emerging new personas, this is very good info to have. From a basic mechanic we start with, 2 ended up emerging. 1 was more senior and experienced. They had more responsibilities. And 1 was less experienced. And they were supposed to have more responsibilities, but they sent work down the production line. That made the more experienced mechanics very angry. So that was very, very interesting and important to share with my stakeholders, that new personas were emerging out of our research. If this is not new info, definitely don't include it. What are the users trying to do? You should have a solidified user journey at the end of your research. And again, if this is wildly different from scoping pointed out, but you don't need this, you don't need to revisit it if it's not, extremely interesting and pretty new. What I do love doing though, one idea I haven't shown you, is if you have the journey on the top and then you highlight on the timeline where the main problems were. That's a really cool visual that I like. So there are a few summary items to point out. Then the culmination of your research, Gary, I'm doing great on time. The culmination of your research, and again, remember the whole point of why we're paying you to do this research is to facilitate the design and the leadership decisions. So this is always our final thing. We always need to leave time for what leadership want to do. We need to get decisions from them. So obviously, frequently throughout your project, you're checking in with your product manager and your stakeholders to ensure you're always on the right course, you're learning, you're solving, like weekly, if not daily. So this is your final chance to get closure on what you need to do next. Because if you're finished with your research, you don't have any work to do tomorrow, or you shouldn't have work to do tomorrow unless someone like kind of tells you like, hey, this is what's next, right? So it's also kind of your responsibility to help facilitate, what do I need to do next? So are you going to start planning your design sprint, or are you going to go screen more users? And So to use your time most wisely, I always like to just, collaboratively, okay, where are we going? Of course, UCD is rarely linear. And so I can think of 3 main, very different directions we can go from this point. So the most common choice, of course, is especially enterprise work, because we're already pretty sure, this stuff needs to be done. And user research is more of a tool to understand, like validate what our assumptions are. So number 1 is to continue down the UCD flow. I've just validated all these problems. We have a lot of problems to solve. Which one do we want to submit to Design Studio or Design Sprint? The Design Studio is like a 1 hour, 2 hour. Design Sprint's like a 3-day, 5-day kind of design activity, right? So we have all these problems, and that could be a follow-on meeting you're scheduling, and I write it here. Wanted to show you guys. I actually notate in my research report, everyone in the meeting chose this one at this exact date, and that's where I'm jumping off of. The 2 less common directions are persevere, which is we didn't learn enough in the research, which I feel like has hardly ever happened, especially with your amazing teaching you're getting at the University of Washington. Let's go learn more about this. We hope you've learned enough, and that's why you're even sharing your research report. And then 3 is pivot. We've learned enough. We actually aren't inclined or excited to just jump into this design work. Let's go learn about something else. And that has happened to me in the workplace before. So I want to give your leadership the different, basically what you are capable of doing next. You want to kind of lay that out for them. Here are the options. Here are things I'm very capable and willing to do. And then another just tip for junior designers, sometimes they have a lot of passion around jumping into design, and they had their heart set on jumping into design when leadership wanted to take another direction. And we do need to be okay with that, because we are here to learn for our team. And if they no longer want to learn about those topics, then we pivot, and that's totally cool. So so that's basically the end of the report. So this is just one extra slide on you're getting set up for Design Studio. So again, this can be just even a follow-on meeting. We know there's always more than one problem you've presented in your research report, but I typically like bringing just one big problem to a Design Studio or a Design Sprint. So this is the Lean UX inspired template for how you basically summarize your entire report in one nice paragraph. And if I'm jumping into a small Design Studio, 1 to 2 hours, this is the absolute perfect amount of context to share with your team to get them excited about the problem, and demonstrates all the research you just did. You're demonstrating you validated. I love the we have observed. That's been really critical in teaching teammates that aren't as familiar with user-centered design. You can't just say this is a problem. You have to say we saw it. That's really important. So basically what I do, if you recall the journey map format that I have, I always start with the desired outcomes. I always swap that out first. You're basically just going to your journey map, copying what those desired outcomes are, and pasting them in here. If you don't do that first, I found a lot of teams in a lot of my really big workshops just sneak in solution ideas into the problem statement, and we know that's a big no-no in our problem statements. They shouldn't have any piece of solution verbiage whatsoever. And remember that the problem is not the lack of a solution. The problem is not the lack of a solution. The problem is the problem. And then we can talk about solution later and what those ideas are. But if we're putting solution ideas into our problem statement, that means that there's really only one correct solution, and that's not how we facilitate Design Studio, right? So getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but yeah, basically just plug in the rest of it as you would. That is your carrying the team on through design based on your research findings. I hope you guys learned a lot today. And thank you so much. I'll take any other questions you may have.